asleep. And so when I fell asleep, that caused a whole lot of other stuff to go awry. So anyway, here I am eating my breakfast of diverse melons and whatnot. So let me get in my notes. Okay, so let me see here. So I know that okay. Trying to I thought I had at least a couple. Oh, you know what? I know where they are. Anyway, there we go. Okay. So we have some good news and some bad news for this week. None of First of all, Adam's Rib Media Ministry is living forever. So that's good news. But none of what I'm going to talk about has to do with that. So as you know, unless you've been under a rock for the past 24 hours, we have a new justice of the Supreme Court, and she is the first black woman. So, like I have said on the podcast that I have to upload today, you got to watch Sleeping on Us Black Women. Okay? You just got to watch. You got to watch what you say about us black women. Because while you sleeping on us, we ain't sleeping on us. I can't tell you the number of times that I have been in situations where people just knew I wasn't going to do anything, and then I turned around and surprised them. And it was very funny because they're like, looking around like, how'd she do that? Well, you snooze, you lose. Just because you sleep on me doesn't mean I'm sleeping on me. Because I will never sleep. One person I will never sleep on is going to be me. So, like I said, as a black woman, the world may sleep on you. Black men may sleep on you. Don't you ever sleep on you. Okay? Because people sleep on us. A whole lot of people going to sleep on you. Just don't let it ever be you. Adams Red
Can I
Media
tell you
Ministry.
something? Yes, you may tell me something.
Sorry. And Adams Rib Media Ministry is part of that process. Um, because I've had people to sleep on me. And people sleep on you all kinds of different ways. And in church, they sleep on you when they start giving you a whole lot of negative prophecies and a whole lot of negative words. They will say stuff like, yeah, she gonna end up pregnant. How many of you have ever heard that a time in your life? She gonna wind up pregnant. She gonna wind up on a pole. They say negative stuff about where you'll end up. That's a sign that they're sleeping on you. That's a sign of really not a whole lot of belief in you. So I'm going to tell the story. I remember being at this church, and there was a lot of witchcraft being practiced. And so they had a tendency, and the Lord kind of revealed to me who was doing it. And so they continued to give me all these give me all these negative dreams. And one of them was some guy that they thought I liked. If you'll pay attention to my pages, one of the things that I'm always saying is I'm grateful to every woman who has ever slept with a guy that she thought I liked. I have even recently thanked God for every white woman that has ended up with a black man that they thought they was taken from us. Because if you don't know, here lately, black men have been doing this thing where they pit women and black women against each other, or they pit black women against every other ethnicity. Guys who do that. And so, to get back into this dream showed the guy that I wouldn't say was hoping to marry, but because I wasn't as proficient as being able to discern spirits yet, um, the dream showed me this guy marrying another woman, and me winding up being heartbroken and backsliding out of the church, and winding up sleeping with white men to pay my bills. Now, of course, that has never happened. But can you see how somebody, and the Holy Spirit revealed that someone from my church, probably the pastor, along with one of his little pets, spoke that over my life. It was not true then, it ain't true now. I'm still holding it down 27 years of abstinence. So why would somebody want to speak such a negative word over you? Many times people have issues with classism, racism, colorism. I was looking at I happen to be on YouTube, which spend a lot of time watching YouTube, since now I'm able to see YouTube on my Roku device, my Roku TV. And so, because I'm able to watch it, it's almost more interesting to watch YouTube than it is to watch regular television, because you pretty much program your own TV to watch whatever you want to watch. So, I happened to look last night and see where Miss Jane Elliott, and if you don't know, Miss Jane Elliott is a white lady, a teacher who, I don't know if she still teaches or not, who does a thing called the brown eye, blue eye test. And she's been doing it since the 60s. In fact, she implemented it when she heard the news of Martin Luther King being assassinated, being murdered. And she started off with elementary school kids. And the purpose of the exercise is to teach white people what it is like to experience racism. And so this particular time she did it in the UK. And every time I watch the test, it is always interesting to see how a lot of white people react. Like people of color don't necessarily react. First of all, most of us fall into the brown eye category, so we get to take a break from racism for a minute during during the test. Um, it is always interesting to me, and I mean, Miss Elliott, that's Jane Elliott. The first time I heard of her, she was on Oprah Winfrey and did it. And she tells people she has gotten death threats. She has gotten, she people react really, really badly to this test. Now, in the world of research, in the world of psychological research, because there's different branches of psychology. All psychology is not you going into a therapist's office and talking to them and them taking notations and possibly prescribing for you or helping you. That's one branch of psychology. That's counseling psychology. The other branches of psychology are research psychology. Um, if you've ever read a journal article, and I suggest that you do read one at some point in your life, because journal articles are very interesting to read. Journal articles is where people like research sociologists and different people, where people come up with these articles and say 70% of or 10% of, and give you these different stats. Um, that's where they get. That's where ideally they get their information is they look at journal articles and they do research on different things. And so when they do that research, and it's scientific research, they may have people fill out questionnaires. I have put up questionnaires and I will be doing it again. And for those who follow me, when I do a questionnaire, I will, even if you're one of my relatives, I appreciate it. I appreciate when you fill them out, because when you fill them out, it gives us, well, let's say out of a group of maybe 100, 100 is my perfect number, because then you don't have to go so far when it comes to dissecting what percentage. We also measure it according to, we may measure it according to the ethnicity, your level of education, your level of income, and different other stuff, and they measure for that so that they can see, so they measure for that so that they can see what effects something is having. And so when they do research, there's usually a question, a hypothesis that they're trying to prove. And there are different types of scientific studies. Some are natural observation, some we may do an actual experiment. And it's actually pretty fun. For my undergrad, I did me and a couple of partners measured how likely, if someone had a memory of something that they did that was wrong, how liable they were to see the difference between light and dark. And it was interesting. It proved the article right, but like only marginal. And but it was fun to do. It's very fun to do experiments and different research experiments to see just how things turn out. And if you're proven wrong, one of the things that I one of the things that my undergrad taught me, and even the time that I was in my MS, um, I did an experiment in my research and learning that involved singing. So what I did was how likely a person was able, what effect practice had on a person's ability to learn the scales. do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, da. And then, we set it forward and then set it backward. Then, so I had them say it, just the rough part, and then had them practice it, and basically measured how long it took for a person to say the scales forward and backward. And of course, the question was whether it would lessen their time doing it, and of course, with practice, they were able to say it a lot quicker. Or so stuff like that. Of course, in the real world, when you are looking at journal articles, they are measuring more serious stuff. And it is amazing to me, with all the information out there, that there have been studies done and different other things that talk about the detrimental effects of racism. And you still have white people and black people, less black people than white people, I would say, that still are a bit tone deaf to the effects of racism in our society. There also are a lot of people who are tone deaf to the effect of sexism. And so I thought that it was interesting. And so I looked at it, and it was interesting. I always find it interesting the amount of denial that some people will have. And all of the stuff that she was talking about was stuff that I experienced. All of the stuff, like she really did her research on what African Americans go through and people of color when it comes to racism. And so a lot of the stuff that she said over here and did, and so usually the blue eye group with her is the discriminated against group. And so she put a whole bunch of propaganda out there, how they're less intelligent. Like, think about think about anything. If you've been sitting and reading a magazine article, or you've been sitting and listening to the news, and somebody came out with some new study that says something negative about black people, that wasn't true. Most of it's not true. And then, the journalist does the breakdown and everything else, and they have the person on there to explain. Or somebody has wrote a book. I remember, the first thing that comes to me is the bell curve. Despite all of this that you hear, there are people in the world who still will act like, oh, well, racism got cured because we had a black president, or racism is now being cured because we have a vice president who is a woman of color, black woman. A, a racism is now being cured because we have a new black justice of the peace. I mean, justice, Supreme Court justice. So yeah, no, my terminology this morning or this afternoon. So it is not being cured. It is not being cured. There's reasons for all of that. A lot of it, I have my own little cynical takes on why, but I'm also praising God that it happened, because it was not an easy journey for Miss Jackson. Every time I hear it say every time I say the words Miss Jackson, it takes me back to the Outcast song, Miss Jackson. My daughter and my son used to be crazy about Outcast, and I like them too. I mean, I'm a fan of theirs as well. I became a fan. Actually, they had other songs that I remember when I listened to their catalog of work. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that song. Yeah, that was my song. That was my song I used to dance to or whatever back in the day. So I didn't even realize that was them. So, but the Miss Jackson, because my daughter liked the video, and she liked the dogs in the video. So every time I say the word Miss Jackson, the first thing I think about is that song. But um, I I still celebrate with Miss Jackson on a This is a W for black women. Okay. I grew up in the day where we celebrated black people's achievements, regardless of who they were married to, because I know there's been questions there. Um, Simply because for me, another black person getting into a place of power and occupying spaces that were off to us in the priorly is a sign of progress. It is a sign of progress. Now in some cases it could be imagined progress, because or slow progress, let me put it that way, because she's really technically only the third black person to be confirmed as a justice. So while it shows us coming far, it also shows how far we have to go. Okay. And not to imagine, I think they have one lady in there who is Hispanic, and I think she got in there through the first Obama administration. Don't quote me on that. Look it up. I always encourage you to look it up, because can I be wrong? Sure. I can be wrong. My memory faults me just like anybody else's. And since none of this is stuff that I have looked up, um, prior to coming on here, there can be mistakes. So that's one of the reasons why I like to look up things. One of the reasons why I like to have notes in front of me most of the time, or be looking at my phone when I'm talking to you, because I like to have looked things up first. So anyway, she did it. She did this experiment, and every time I watch her do the experiment, it's always funny that when the realization of what black people go through, especially black people, um, the amount of white people who get outraged at the thought of somebody. And I'm like, imagine having to spend your life having to combat people's preconceived notions about you. And as I said before, now we're having a problem with black people obtaining power and then closing doors on other black people. Because when you sleep on black women, that's basically you closing a door. So, Miss Katati Jackson, I had when I did during February when I was doing 28 Days of Black Feminism. She and the other two black women that were also being considered were my first notables that I talked about. And when I did her podcast and looked at her credentials, and I would highly recommend, well, you listen to my podcast, but you also can Google her, which you probably have already done. Now, I'm enjoying the smartphone technology, because it does, you have the internet and everything at your hands, so that you can look up stuff, right there. You ain't got to, pick, especially when I'm out driving, and I don't have to go and pick up some big bulky phone book looking stuff up. I can just look it up in my phone. My mother, the queen mother, loves it, because she loves the fact that I can look stuff up in my phone. So I'm like, she has a smartphone too. And some of y'all that are her age group gonna laugh, because this may be you. Um, she love My mother loves that I know how to look stuff up too, and she will have me cracking up. She'll look that up in your phone. I'm like, Mom, you have a smartphone too. Um, and she will still. I'm like almost ready to have her. Um, she's still wanting to get a typewriter, which I'm like, shoot, in this day with Word and all this other stuff, why do you want a typewriter? But you know how that goes. Like, you can't divorce yourself. I've even heard teachers when I was in school. I'm like, shoot, I love I love word processing because I remember the old days of typewriters. And I remember that it wasn't that easy. Like with word processors, if you make a mistake or you aren't the most proficient typist, it's easier to correct your mistakes. On old fashioned typewriters, it was not that easy. They like they eventually came to the place where if you made a mistake you could correct it. There was a correction key, there was an erasement key, and different stuff like that. But I ain't trying to go back to typewriters. you know um now it has made typing classes turn into other things. Like they had administrative classes when I was in high school. You could sign up for clerical, and you would take typing classes so that you could learn how to type. I wound up not being able to complete those classes because my classes were more in the world of cosmetology. And there's nothing wrong with that. Eventually, I learned, how to type, and I'm still yet learning or whatever how to, getting quicker at it. But I'm like, I have no desire to go back to the day of the typewriter. I don't miss none of that because I like being able to make up my own stationery. I like being able to, create business letters, especially now that I'm doing Adams Rib Media Ministry. Like I said, I plan on turning my spare bedroom that used to be my daughter's room into an office. So even in anywhere I live, I'm going to have a spare bedroom that I can turn into an office so that I can do all of my work in that bedroom and leave my bedroom for sleeping, relaxing, and watching television and everything else that I do and everything, and turning it into a studio. So tonight, there will be Eclectic Music Geek will be on at midnight. If you want to listen to it, you can go to the Station Head app. You can also listen to me online. I believe it's stationhead.live. Um, stationhead.live/ AdamsRib66 would be the station. So tonight I am going to celebrate um, two things. I didn't get a chance to do a show on the Grammys because I didn't realize the Grammys was going to be so soon after the Oscars. And so I'm like, people, I'm like, there's two. I saw one of my other commentators that I listened to talk about what low ratings that the Grammys have gotten this year. And And I think one reason that the ratings were low was we just got done watching the Oscars. I didn't watch them. I saw I was looking at YouTube, and YouTube, whether people know it or not, YouTube is social media also. So YouTube is a form of social media. I already subscribed to the Oscars YouTube account channel, and I also have subscribed to the Grammys and I think the other ones as well. And so I already subscribed to those accounts. So anything that they're doing or anything that they're hosting, they post on their account and we see it. So the slap heard around the world, I got a chance to see. I kind of got a chance to see it in real time because the stations that were paying attention to it, like and whatever, I can't even remember what station they were actually on. So I didn't watch the whole ceremony. From what I was told, though, it was kind of boring, which is bad. Um, but I did get to see the slap. I also got to see Questlove, accept his award. Good going, Quest. I got to see. If you get a chance to see Summer of Soul, please see it. It is a very good film. It'll make you proud to be black. Um, what they were able to do. It is almost the music festival that they had filmed was almost like our Black Woodstock. So um I've become more and more of a history buff here lately, like looking at some stuff I remember when it happened. And I remember being, regular citizen me and listening to the news and hearing about it. So some stuff I like to listen to because I like to look at it from the vantage point of where I am now as a 55-year-old grandmother. So um, it's been interesting. um, I also am going to be uploading my podcast that I did this week to Anchor. I think I've uploaded two of them already, so they're already available. But over the weekend, I'm going to be converting my podcast to videos so that they can be seen on YouTube. Anyway, so that's been another thing. The other thing that isn't such good news, well, it depends on how you look at it. If you are a fan of Estelle Harris, actress Estelle Harris has lost her has well, like I said, in Christianity, we don't believe in it as a loss. So, Miss Estelle Harris, many of you, if you're like me, you remember her as George Costanza's mother on the show Seinfeld. Has passed away. She passed away April 2nd, I believe. She was in her 90s. So if you follow anybody close to her, give them your love and respect. Let them know how much her acting gift has meant to you. I remember when Seinfeld first came on the air and when they first began to show each of the characters' parents. I don't think they ever showed Kramer's parents. So Seinfeld had fans like every color. It was an experience. It wasn't just a sitcom. It was an experience. They were responsible for a lot of phrases that you hear in pop culture today. Serenity Now. And it was on so long that I was watching it and my mom started watching it. And so I had fell off for a minute because I had to work on Thursday nights when it was on. Unlike now where we can go to unlike now where we can go to the TV site and watch the show um in our time. We don't have to necessarily be there watching it because it just reminded me. I'm gonna try to watch the Law and Order shows. The original Law and Order is back on, and so with Anthony Anderson and some of the original players, and I'm like, oh, I'm so here for it. So now that it's back on, I'm like, but I always wind up out with my mother somewhere and not being able to see it. So now it's like 3 hours of Law and Order. I am in Thursday night heaven because I already am in love with Law and Order SVU. So now, they got the original back. I'm like ready for all three. And I've been watching the one Organized Crime where they brought her partner Elliot back, and now he's got a show surrounding him. Um, he's carrying it really well. He's carrying it really well. Usually, the concern when they do a spinoff is if the characters that are you an interesting enough character that people are going to watch you, especially if the original show that you came out of goes off the air and they keep you. And there are many shows that have been able to do that. Frasier was one. Many people don't realize that Frasier was a spinoff of Cheers. Just about everything in the Norman. Um, oh my God, I forgot the man's last name. Just about everything out of the All in the Family franchise of shows, and um, I think Sanford and Son was like a standalone sitcom, pretty much was able to carry their weight. And you can't just be a popular character. You have to be a character that if they put you in a show that surrounds you by yourself, that you can carry that show. And it's not always easy. I remember the Jeffersons had a couple of spin-offs, and it was like they had Florence had her own show, Marla Gibbs. I don't think that would. I really believe that that one didn't wasn't given enough of a chance, and then they wound up bringing her back on the Jeffersons. And then I was trying to think if somebody else on there. I would have liked to see Lionel and Jenny spin off because I wasn't ready for the Jeffersons to be off the air when they left. So I was real. So I was real upset when they decided to do that. I'm like, I wasn't ready for them to go yet. But that's the way they do sometimes. So with the Law and Order ones, they um they took Criminal Intent off, which I liked SVU better than I liked Criminal Intent. And yet, every time I looked on my TV, I was seeing Criminal Intent, which if you're a viewer, it can piss you off. So anyway, back to everything else. So now we had the ability to watch our shows. Um, Now we had the ability to watch our shows in our time. And, if you get a chance to watch some of your favorite stuff and want to keep them on the air, do that. They also, pay attention to your YouTube activity. So everywhere where they have social media on these shows, give them your love and support and everything. Um, show them your love and support if you want to continue to keep seeing some of your favorite characters or your favorite people, and that goes for the reality shows too. Um, Even though I don't watch them as much as I watch some of the other television, I can remember at one point becoming addicted because they're more like the soap operas. Stay tuned for next week. Well, so and so and so and so and so and so, so you wind up watching because you want to see what's going to happen next. And so it's interesting. So I wasn't looking at I what so because of my own experience with YouTube, I was able to see the slap in real time. And it's like been 2 weeks and folks are still dissecting this couple's relationship based on this slap. And I'm like, we're still talking about this. I'm like, it happened. Like what I think is so interesting is the amount of people who keep wanting to blame Jada for the slap. And I talked about that when I talked about the whole Jezebel spirit thing. And to me, I'm one of those people because of racism in this society, which is one of the reasons I brought up Miss Jane Elliott. A lot of people don't realize how many things are racist, how many things are racist in their connotation. So I knew number one, I think it's still been going for the past couple of weeks because it's a black man who hit another black man. A very high profile, famous black man who hit another black man. I knew that there were going to be people calling for harsher punishments for him because of our society's tendencies to make black men an example. Okay, you could have two white rockers get into a fight. You could have two rappers at the Source Awards break down and fight. But do not be a black man and hit another man on stage, any color, but especially black, and hit them one time. They didn't wind up into a knockdown drag out. They didn't, none of that happened. It was just one slap on stage. And you will find out quickly how black you are when you decide to commit a social faux pas like that. Okay, number one. And you will find out how quickly the majority of white people will act like they have been traumatized and like whatever you did put their eye out. So I expected that to happen, and it did. And everybody was so outraged. Even people who have done stuff on stage, their own self, Jim Carrey, acted outraged. I'm like, acted outraged. The first thing they do, if it's a black person, they will find a way to make us examples so nobody else will try the same behavior, even though there have been white people who have done worse. If there's a black woman connected to it, black men will find out a way to make it her fault. So I knew, and I have seen more YouTube accounts going through my stream calling Jada Pinkett. I said, watch, she gonna be Jezebel. Just watch. And soon as they possibly could, Jezebel got dragged out of the ashes and got stuck on Jada Smith. So now she's Jezebel. Oh yeah, ain't no way in the world a black man gonna get something and a black woman escape. Are you kidding? Our entire existence is always consequences because somebody always wants to give us consequences for things that other people do, and we're expected to just roll on like it never happened. Okay, so everything that they're doing, I know. I remember when the whole and they talked about the Oscars so white thing. I'm like, when have the Oscars ever been black? When have any award show ever been overly represented by people of color? It hasn't, and much of it is because of racism. I have always felt like the award show stage, the major ones like the Oscars, the Tonys, the Emmys, and the Grammys, they've always been racism. It's always been mostly white. So why be shocked if you have seasons where you see a lot of white people? Okay, nothing but white people. No, and the Oscar snub. And the funny thing, and a lot of it is very, very rigged and very, very not just in favor of white people, but also in favor of also a lot. There's a lot of politicking that goes into the award system. It really is. So this is one of the reasons why you watch and get pissed and wind up pissed. Or you can see something like one of your favorites, because Will's one of my favorites. So is Chris Rock. So I'm Team Jesus on that whole thing. Like I don't really care. I personally would love to see the brothers at one point make peace and not take 20 years doing it. Both of them are in their 50s. We don't want to wait till they in their 70s to make any type of peace out of this situation. But it's been funny how many people have done so much dissecting on this couple's marriage because of this slap. And just like whatever black men get, black women always get a whole lot worse. Okay, we really do. We get a whole lot worse, depending on what it is. Whatever white women get, black women get a whole lot worse because it's coupled, we get sexism, but we get sexism coupled with racism. We get misogyny, but we get misogynoir because we get misogyny based on the fact that we're females, but we also get misogynoir because we're black. Okay. So whatever a white woman might go through with white men, we get it a whole lot worse because we are a woman of color, because we are black. Okay. So having to deal with that whole thing. Anyway, back to the dream that was, said about me. For one thing, to me, when someone speaks that kind of stuff over my life, and I'm going to do more on the divest movement because I believe in hearing people's, even though I'm not in agreement with it, and I have a lot of reasons why. And one of them is I always have been the type of person who sees the bigger picture. One church I was at, they called me a visionary, not necessarily prophetic, but a person who looks and says, this is going to be problems. I could see this being a mess. Um, I could see it being a mess. For one thing, it operates from the standpoint of marrying a white person being an upgrade. And if you have that attitude, you are going to be disappointed because white people are people too. And the same things that you will find in the black community that you don't like are present in the white community. And because you are a person of color, you may get even worse out of it. Okay. That's my whole thing. Now, it depends on which divester you listen to. I tend to like to listen to smart women no matter what group that smart is represented in. So smart girls, I wound up making a blog out of Smart Black Girls Club because it was time. And smart black girls is not just black girls with degrees. It's black women with a lot of intellect, a lot of old homespun wisdom, different other things. And so Smart Black Girls Club is now a blog. I have probably in the past couple of weeks while everything was going on, I have um and I've talked about this before, um created 7 more blogs. I'm also considering a gamer blog because for those of us who like to play games on our iPhones, not necessarily gamers, professional gamers, but for those people who love to play on their iPhone and are playing very popular games and wanting to find out how to defeat certain levels and different stuff like that. It's still kind of up here. I haven't gone on WordPress and created it yet. I'm still having to post on the 7 recent blogs that I have posted on. I also started following some of the local black radio stations who do news, and so I will be sharing some of their content as well. And if I can, I don't do celebrity tea at all. But what I do is if I see something going on, a current event, and I see different angles, like some stuff that I can derive from it. Like I said, I am Team Jesus on the whole Will Smith thing simply because most most societies have an expectation of men being able to protect their household. Whether or not you think it's fair or not depends on how you feel about that kind of thing. So when it comes to that, there seem to be 3 camps. There's, oh my God, his behavior was so atrocious. How will the Oscars ever recover? Them folks will be back up and running next year. I promise you. So there's that camp. They're, team no violence, no matter what, violence is not the answer. He was completely wrong. It was a very ugly thing to do. Da 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 da. Um, Part of me almost wants to say with your fake self, but I'm not. But I'm not gonna do that because being anti-violence is not fake. Some people just don't believe in violence, and people who do believe in violence have not been a very good advertisement to people who don't believe in violence. I am pretty much team no violence. I feel like if you can find a way to mm-mm. So, and no, I don't feel like Wanda Sykes is fake for saying, like, I cannot tell you what that you did not experience what you experienced, and I'm not gonna try to. Okay. So um sometimes your reaction to something kind of tells you what you have been through in your own life. And many times if you have been through some things, you know, you can be team no violence because of violence that you have experienced and saw. You can also be team no violence because you were just raised to not believe in violence. And that's perfectly cool. It's perfectly okay to not believe in violence. Then there's the second camp, with where Team Tiffany Haddish was the most beautiful thing she ever saw. Every time I think about that, I crack up laughing. But if you read her story and her testimony of having survived the stuff that she's been through, I can kind of understand that, because when you are feeling very, and one of the things that has been going around, and those would be the collective that is Team Black women are very underprotected, and we are. 9 times out of 10, we wind up having to protect ourselves in situations. And then when we do stick up for ourselves, we're called Jezebel, we're called Sapphire, we're called combative. And people can sit there and watch somebody do some mess to you. And then when you answer it back, I don't want us to ever have to feel like we have to let people walk all over us to feel like we're being taken sick, and I do. I kind of have a problem with the fact that Chris Rock was complimented for standing there. And I can understand those compliments, because really you don't want to see somebody get into an all out rumble and be rolling on the stage or anything like that. You just don't want to, you just don't want to see it. Although if I did see it, I still wouldn't judge them any harshly than anybody else in any other circle judges anybody else. Okay, these are also still two human beings. So there's, and like I said, team, beautiful thing I ever saw. Team, protect your woman, defend your woman, and stand up for your woman is where that lies. And then there's the third team. Why didn't Jada stop him? So this is where we get Black woman is Jezebel again. Jezebel rearing her ugly head, or somebody digging Jezebel up. So once again, black women get to be black women's fault because a black man went out here and did something and made a mistake. Okay, I'm not unfollowing Will nowhere where I'm following him. I'm not unfollowing Chris Rock nowhere where I'm following him either. They're still two of my faves, and they're gonna stay that way because I am Team Jesus. I would like to see the two of them make peace. I would like to see the two of them get it together. I pretty much am not predicting the end of this marriage. I'm predicting, their ability to work things out, because that's what you do when you are married. Everything can't be the end of your marriage, or nobody will be married. Anyway, so I will be taught. So this time next week, I will be on at noon unless something different happens. And then I will have to move them live to another stage. But I still also want to talk about salvation. I talked about, I read excerpts from my book and everything. And I am really worried because many religious spirits, just like the whole thing of Jezebel, there are people trying to make your salvation dependent on things that it's not dependent on. And there are people trying to make your salvation is dependent on faith. One of the things that I like to post on my thing is my stream is that I am saved by faith. I am saved by grace through faith in Jesus Christ. And it is biblical and it is scriptural. My salvation is not based on my works. My salvation is not based on what man finds favor with me. My salvation is not based on marrying the right person. You can be single and be saved. It is not based on my works out here in the community. It is based on my faith in God. It is based on my belief that Jesus died for my sins, was my perfect was the propitiation for my sins, that he was my perfect sacrifice, that God raised him from the dead. Yeah, there's a third one. You got to believe he was raised from the dead, that he is amongst the living, that he is in heaven, that he is interceding on my behalf, that his blood is interceding on my behalf, that he is my perfect sacrifice, that he is my sin sacrifice, that he is the Son of God, God's only begotten Son. And if you look in the Old Testament, there are tropes. There are what they call, what is the prophetic name for that again? Types and shadows of that. The story of Abraham and his son Isaac, when he was asked to sacrifice him, and God stopped him because he was testing his obedience. And the ram that was given to Abraham to sacrifice instead, showing the substitutional grace that we have. Jesus suffered and went to the grave and defeated death, hell, and the grave on our behalf. So when I talk about people, especially famous people, and I talk about famous people because they're people that we've all heard of, and use them as an example and say, well, Miss Estelle transitioned this week. If she knew the Lord in the land of the living, then she's in heaven right now. To be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. And so she's with God now. Any suffering, she's no longer suffering the infirmities that come with being 90 some years old. She's no longer suffering. If she was suffering with any illnesses, she's no longer suffering. Tracy Braxton, no longer suffering. Miss LaShawn Pace, no longer suffering. If they had any illnesses that they were suffering to in this life, they no longer are suffering. They are now with the Lord. They are now suffering. So they have the ultimate bit. They, like I said, provided that they went and were with and are with Christ now, if they're in heaven, then they have the ultimate victory. Death is not you losing your battle with anything. If Miss Frankie Lyons knew Christ in this lifetime, then she is no longer battling addiction. In death, we have victory because we transition. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about the consequences for those who don't believe on, I say, about a couple podcasts from now. I don't want to hit you with that just yet. But we have to remember that that when we are saved, when we are born again, we are not only saved from the penalty of sin, which is the second death, hell, and the grave, we are also saved from the temptation. Not enough people are getting that message, and not enough of y'all are walking in victory. And you are causing a whole lot of other people to live defeated lives as well. And the defeat doesn't always have to be poverty. Sometimes you can be wealthy and still be in bondage to stuff. And when you are, and I'm talking about pastors too. Okay? If you are making up doctrines that allow you to get sex out of women in your church, then you, my brother, are in bondage. If your bondage is so that you are creating teachings that allow you to traffic the women in church, you are in bondage. And when you don't handle your business, you hear about men. Well, men have issues too. Yes, but the one thing about the women of the issue of blood is that she touched his garment and was made whole. It's not enough to admit that you have problems. It is enough to, it is not enough to admit that you have issues. You have to touch the hem of his garment and you have to be healed. And then you have to be willing to heal others. Okay? And not enough women are doing the primary work when it comes to that. Now, you want to claim leadership in your household. You want to claim leadership amongst people. Well, guess what Jesus did as a leader? He first of all laid down his life so that we could be his bride. You're called to love your wife like Christ loved the church. so much so that he gave up his life for her. Are you willing to give up your life of sin? And some of you aren't. Some of y'all are playing. And it's clear that you're playing because you're making up teachings that allow you to pass women around, to hinder women spiritually. You're not uplifting any women. What you're doing is dividing women against each other. Yeah, I recognize game when I see it. I follow this one account on Facebook, and so this man said, said something about wanting to get to know me on a more personal level. And so I said, well, you can follow my Facebook page, and I put the link up there. And he was like following me to, accuse me of following him to get him to follow me, like I was looking for some type of cosign. First of all, and I told him, when I first started following your account, I didn't even have this page. I had blogs, but I didn't have this page. And nothing that I do on my page has anything to do with anything. I don't need your endorsement. It's always funny to me how men want to hold men. It's always funny to me how men who sexually harass or otherwise abuse power over women will do everything they can to dangle a carrot over a woman's head. So let me talk about the carrots. One carrot is the fact that they think you need their endorsement to get some, to meet a goal. Um, you've been hearing here lately about Monique finally making peace with Lee Daniels. Now, I did a blog post about Monique's eraser during the time that she was ready to black boycott Netflix because negotiations were falling through on a comedy special that they wanted, were thinking about doing it. And I talked about how I could understand why she was upset because they were considering her they were offering her a considerably lesser amount than they were offering Amy Schumer. I think it was Dave Chappelle, and was it Kevin Hart? Three other comics that they were offering that they were in the works on. Like they didn't even want to offer my girl $1 million. Everybody else's numbers was in the millions. They were talking to her about the thousands. Like I said, you have to be careful when you sleep on black women. And that's a form of sleeping on you, not offering you. And so somebody argued with me and was, um, I have my thoughts about that reconciliation that I'm going to keep to myself for now and see how this whole thing plays out. Because people have a habit of wanting to um, apologize to you, and then you wind up. Um, I hope they make peace. I hope everything goes good. I always have the feeling that sooner or later they wind up doing behavior that makes you remind you of why you fell out with them in the first place. So, um, I hope everything works out. I understood why she was ready to boycott because of the offer that was there, especially in light of the fact that she was an Oscar winner. And so I can understand the people who want the awards, who like the awards and like the accoutrement that comes with it, because it really should be another feather in your cap. You were able to go out and win this award, and for the performance, so that we know you have the ability. Do I think that Monique has the power to put butts in seats? Yeah, of course she does. She has the ability to get ratings. She has the ability to get people to buy movie tickets. I finally got to see Precious I didn't get to see it when it was out. There was a whole lot of other movies because I'm a big person on supporting black cinema. I believe very much in I believe very much in bringing your giftings home, and I believe very much in supporting black cinema. And so, where we are, I'm gonna be there because I like to support us. Now, if you don't do a good job, I'm also gonna say something too. Now that I am now on the internet and have my own and am running my media empire, speak what I want over it and not what other people want over it. So I'm a black woman that you need to not sleep on, because we have a tendency that when you sleep on us to go out here and do things that you don't think we're able to do. So, and like I have said on a previous podcast, I don't sleep on us, and I don't think we should sleep on each other. We need to be careful sleeping on each other. There seems to be a thing. Yeah, I guess I will say this. So my suspicion about the whole makeup is it didn't seem to happen until Monique started saying posting a lot of negative things toward other black women. So I have a little bit of a problem when you start to get rewarded by your own people for doing something against your other own people. So we're going to see how this thing plays out. Okay. I have a watch and pray attitude toward the reconciliation right now, and for a whole lot of different reasons. So that's just one of them. So be careful as a black woman what someone wants you to do in order to have their endorsement. Anyway, so back to the person who I had the exchange with. So they kept sub posting, which I think is such a punk move. If you have something to say to somebody, why not inbox them? Why not DM them? Why not, have that discussion on another forum? Why do you have to subtweet someone? That just sounds crazy. And so they continued to keep acting like I was after their little endorsement. And so I'm like, I'm still starting out. Yes, my audience is relatively small, because one of the things that weak men like to do is say things about how little you are and how big they are. And so he continued to keep going into this. And I'm like, this right now is an attempt to undermine my faith. So what we're going to do is snooze this brother for 30 days. He need to be in a timeout. First of all, I don't deal with married men, as far as personal things. Number two, I don't deal with men who dangle carrots. Okay, so one of the things that women have to put up professionally is men who dangle carrots, men who sit over here and holler, "Well, can we talk to each other on?" No, I really would prefer not to do that. If you believe in my content, if you look at my content and you see there's something that you believe in, or you want to offer suggestions, that's cool. But I don't really want to do too much inboxing with somebody that I know to be married. Or if you can think of ways that you can help me and you want to inbox me that way, cool. But if your inboxing is about being on some personal mess, I don't got time for that. Okay, and Jeanette does not play the sexual harassment Olympics, and I am not going to allow you to play the rest of my sisters of all colors that way either. Okay, so we are getting into 2:30. So I've only been on here an hour. So anyway, so like I said before, you have to watch. The Word of God says that we are like sheep being led to slaughter. So we have to be, harmless as doves, but wise as serpents. God allows you to keep your worldly knowledge, but he also couples it with the wisdom of the Holy Spirit. So next week, today was just a little bit of a free for all because I really didn't have time to prepare like I would have liked to. But as you can see, I can do free for all and do it pretty well. Um, Next week, I believe the topic is going to be the Holy Spirit and the purpose of the Holy Spirit in the life of a believer. When I do free for alls, as you notice, I still go ahead and add the word because the word applies. The word applies in your everyday life. Everything that we see now on our television sets, the things that we experience in our lives as we're walking down the street, driving down the road, there's all of it is supernatural warfare. And so we all, if you're a born again believer, you have to always remember that we are in a supernatural war. We're in a war with people, with things that we do not see. We are there. We are in a war, and now some of us could be our flesh too, because dying to our flesh is a point of supernatural war. Not reacting to things. One of the things the Holy Spirit kind of put on me yesterday was when you don't react to what the devil wants you to react to, when you don't react to those things that are meant to make you react and act a fool, you are doing supernatural warfare by refusing. Now, that doesn't mean stand there and let somebody go upside your head. I mean, you're not wrong when you defend yourself, which is also an act of supernatural warfare because you're letting a demonic despot, whatever you want to call them, you're letting someone who's operating through the demonic know that you got this. You're letting the spirit that's ruling in that person know that you're not going to have no authority here. Whatever you trying to bring here to create a bunch of goofiness, and many times as women, we tend to forget, especially many times as born again women, because this is a thing for born again Christians. As a born again woman, as a believing woman, you have to remember where the real authority is. Um, the Word of God says, Jesus says in the Word, that in the world you will have trouble. Now, on my one podcast, I talked a little more in depth about this when I talked about Miss Jackson. It was a tight race. It was a very tight race. If you look at the way that things were voted, it was very tight. It was like this. So it would have took only a little bit to put things in another direction. So we know that this little edge right here was Faith. I didn't want to look at these Senate hearings while they were questioning her because I didn't want my faith undermined. So you have to recognize that this is a race of faith. Many people want you to walk by sight and not by faith. We walk by faith and not by sight. We don't go by how things appear because it can throw you off. The devil loves to make a bit of a show out of different things, um, and make it the numbers, your numbers. Look at the numbers. Well, I have all these people following me, and you got crickets. First of all, I don't care about none of that, and I don't have. First of all, I don't have crickets. Okay, but also, I recognize, like the Holy Spirit said, this is somebody that's trying to minimize you. Everybody starts off with small numbers at first. It takes a minute for people to recognize that you're there. But the thing of it is, I'm like, I'm not, I don't, devil, I don't need your little endorsement. Go on over there with your wife, 30 days in the clink, because I'm not about to sit over here and put up with the negativity. you have to recognize, and I'll say this to the feminists, sexual harassment is supernatural warfare. When someone is trying to get you to compromise yourself sexually in order to get next to their stuff, it is an abuse of power. All abuses of power have to do with supernatural warfare. It is definitely the devil. God is never going to tell any man to get in your face and carrot dangle you into. He's not going to tell no man to close doors on you because you're not putting out sexually. He wouldn't do that to you. God loves women. God loves everybody. Now, just like your parents love you unconditionally, they have conditions under which you might need to meet in order for you to enjoy your life with them, enjoy your time under their roof. So, being a person who has raised two people to adulthood, I understand my kids had the right to have opinions. I never shut down their opinions, but I always told them, you can have all the opinions that you want, but mommy kind of has the final word because mommy has a longer trajectory. My vision for your life is a whole lot further. You're thinking in here and now, and I'm thinking about your future. I'm thinking about how my grandchildren are going to be raised. I'm thinking about how you're going to live your life. So you have to be careful. I always think about God having our best interest at heart, even with the stuff that doesn't look. Well, what you mean we can't fornicate? Well, look at all the diseases and everything. Look at what's going on now by disobeying that one commandment and what we're going through. And I'm not just talking about women, I'm talking about men too. Think about all these men that are running around here. I just saw an episode of Love After Lockup. And the young man said, I have the best birth control ever. It's called Pullout. This is why we need Planned Parenthood. People, badmouth Planned Parenthood. This is why we need Planned Parenthood, because we need people in space to tell our young people pull out is not a very effective method, and why pull out is not a very effective method. There can be swimmers at the tip when you enter a woman that can still fertilize an egg. It only takes one sperm cell. So pull out is not effective. The best method is to not be having sex at all. The best method, because it's very hard to fertilize an egg if you're not having sex. The others are, first of all, prophylactics. It's amazing to me the number of men who don't want to wear condoms and give women so many problems about wearing a condom, but don't want to have to take care of no kids. I will take that holy hush as my amen. The number of men, and I had a blog post not too long ago. I had it on the way to work not too long ago that talked about responsible sexuality and how not many men want to practice responsible sexuality. Nobody wants side babies, but nobody wants to stop cheating. Everybody want women to be loyal to situations that God never called women to be loyal to. I'm going to say again, and I'm going to repeat this until I am blue black in the face. God is not allowing men to put you in compartments. God is not putting women in compartments and saying, well, these are wives, these are side pieces, these are hoes, and these are for the streets. He's not doing any of that. Don't let any man fool you with a prophetic word. God is not allowing black men to trade black women to white men. So the talk that you hear about swirling, I don't think that the current pressure to get black women to swirl is coming from God. God is not allowing men to use certain women to until their woman is ready. I have heard a whole lot of so called prophetic words here lately that are not prophetic words. What it is game with a bunch of scriptures attached to it. It's game with a bunch of misused scriptures attached to it. So I have another blog called Sex, Food, and Family, where I invite healthy discussions about sex and healthy discussions about, family, because, sex is how we get family, sex is how we get children. So if you need, any discussions about kids, um, that can happen. Also, food. Food is very, very, food to me is very erotic. Food is how we fellowship when we celebrate the holidays. Food is a part of our fellowship. There's a reason that the term breaking bread exists, because we typically cut covenant and do things over, food. It's very inviting, whether it's an intimate setting of two people getting to know each other romantically. It is also very inviting when you have relatives over and want to celebrate the holidays. So that's why the whole entire blog. But I also like to shoot straight from the hip. I like to be as I like to be as um, direct as I possibly can, even with my stories. And so, but I also talk about issues like sexual harassment, sexual purity. Is purity culture toxic? Um, I can see where a person outside of Christianity would see the toxicity. I also can see the toxicity in being promiscuous, because I have been in the world and I have, reformed fornicator. So I know the different lines that get used to bring women into very compromising sexual situations. Sleeping your way to the top is a trap, and it is a trap based on power. Anything that you can't say no to is not true freedom. Freedom allows you to be able to say no to things that you view as being wrong. And I think nowhere do we hear more lies when it comes to so-called freedom than in the arena of sex. A lot of people try to make like being able to sleep with who you want is freeing who you want. And many times women are coerced into behaviors to please a man. And oftentimes it is not something they really want to do. So you wind up being resentful. You also wind up feeling resentful towards self because you gave in. I understand all of those feelings. So, and like I said, to the feminist, sexual harassment is a sin. Sexual harassment is demonic. Sexual harassment is something that, so let no one fool you when they tell you that this is part of our culture, this is part of our belief system. 9 times out of 10, many of those pastors are lying to you. Anybody that is trying to get you to betray another woman over into sexual sin is not coming from God. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get off here because I have Adams Rib Media Ministry to and business to handle. I also have my mom to take around, but back to Eclectic Weekends. So, Eclectic Weekends tonight at midnight is going to celebrate the Grammys, since I didn't really get a time and space to do that before the Grammys. I'm also going to celebrate a new show that I have been watching here lately called American Song Contest. And anybody knows me, I love music. Music is my thing. Yes, I do sing. That will probably be something. a future endeavor. I'm not equipped to deal with any of that. I do sing. I love music. I've developed even more of a love for it lately. I uh, am enjoying this contest. If it's a music contest, I pretty much am there because I love to watch music contests. I love to watch new talent being birthed into the world of music. So most of the artists that I am a fan of now, I've been a fan since their first album, and that would be including the ones that I was born into, like say certain Motown artists. I was kind of birthed into being their fan because they were already around before I was born. So I was birthed into being their fan. Others like the Jackson Five, Michael Jackson. I've been a fan of Michael since I was 6. I've been a fan of Janet's since I was, oh God, since the first time me and my cousins saw her on their variety show. So we've been a fan of hers and Reeby's and Latoya's ever since we found out they existed. So, and most of those people are now superstars and have just done. I'm like, I could be the perfect headhunter for some of these record companies because everybody that I like is still around and still doing it and still doing their thing musically. Like they've had some hiccups just like anybody else. But anytime you are in anything for a decade or more, there are going to be some hiccups that show up. So, anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get off here. You guys have a good weekend. Enjoy your children, enjoy your grandchildren, enjoy your loved ones, enjoy each other. I'm not sure what is the weather going to be like this weekend. Okay, so there is a national weather statement for Franklin County. So there's a weather statement until 3:45. Action recommended: avoid the subject event as per the instructions issued by Cincinnati Wilmington, Ohio National Weather Service. Affected area: Franklin County. Description: small hail or graupel possible today. Showers will move through the area today. Small hail or graupel will be possible with the heavier showers. Lord have mercy. So, right now, our temperature is 49. We hit the high for our area. Um, Looks like it's going to be in the high 40s all evening long. And let's see, around midnight when my show starts, it's going to drop to the low 40s and then get into the 30s. And then by sunrise tomorrow, which is 7:02, it'll still be, oh, it's predicted to, we're predicted to have some snow, possible snow. So the weekend is not really going to be all that warm. We are expected to have, we're expected to be in the high 30s and low 40s, at least over Saturday. So let me see here. So Saturday is expected, high temperature is expected to be 43 degrees. Sunday 57. So it's going to climb. It's going to climb some more. Oh, so it's going to climb up a little bit on Sunday. We'll be in the high 50s, 57. And then by the time Monday rolls around, it's going to be 68 degrees. April, um, and possibly even in the 70s. I can wear my sundresses. I can rock my sundresses this week. The 70s, Monday through. So, this is one of the things about April in the Midwest. And we're talking about Columbus right now, even though Maslin and Canton and Cleveland probably getting similar reports. So, this is the funny thing about April in the Midwest. Monday through Thursday, we're going to see high 60s and low 70s. Then, when we get around to Friday, we're going to see the low 60s, and then for Saturday and Sunday, the low 50s. I always think that's funny because on the days on the days where you would like it to be warm, like the weekend, it'll dip. During the days where you could care less about it being warm because most of the time you got to work or be in school, it's going to be warm. The days where you can least do anything to enjoy any of it, it's going to be warm. As soon as we get into the weekend, then the temperature starts to drop again until finally when we get into May, when we get to the end of April and then get into May, then it starts staying consistently warm. So, anyway, you all have a good weekend. Enjoy your weekend. I don't think it's going to be, we're going to do, it looks like it's going to be some back and forth, but whatever you do, if it's cold, stay warm. Um, like I said, YouTube right now is got movies that you can rent. The t- YouTube has movies that you can rent. They also have free movies if you don't mind looking at ads. The nice thing about YouTube ads is that you have the ability to click the skip button if you don't want to have to look at them. Now, if you're old school like me, you can also use the ads as your time to run to the necessary room, or go get you, or go, fill up on your snacks to come back and be able to watch the rest of the program that you're watching. But YouTube has movies like there's YouTube movies that you can rent or watch free with ads. There's also several channels that have movies that you can watch. Real Black is showing up. Let me tell you something. I have been very blessed to see some of my favorite YouTube personalities showing up in some of these documentaries. Ain't God good? So I looked in the Cosby one. I looked up and saw the guy who runs Real Black. So Real Black shows a lot of. It's sort of a history channel. It's one of many channels that is starting to do a lot of Black history. So if you really want to learn a lot about us, Real Black is your man. So he does a lot of documentaries. He also shows old school movies, stuff that I remember when it was current, which is like most old school, somebody was around when it was being made. If you want to look at some old Black movies, Real Black is the man. So there's all kinds of channels. I posted a blog on the Bloody Lampshade, my new horror blog, about different channels that are around now um, that if you don't want to invest in a 2 hour movie, they have like 15 minutes or less um, horror clips. Or if you're into true crime, I'm a big true crime fan. I have to, anymore though, with some of that stuff, when they get too descriptive about what they've done to their crime victims, I kind of have to. The nice thing about watching something on YouTube, and this is something, um, think about that I have to remember is that if you go away to the bathroom while a scene is playing, you can either pause it, and go to the bathroom or go get, stock up on your snacks. Or you can rewind it back to the part that you think you missed. There's so much you could do, and I'm like, and with some of this new TV, I have to remember that I can do that because I'm a product of the live TV generation, where you did the live broadcast and you pretty much had to get together at that particular time and watch something. I miss it, but I kind of like the addition of, if I do miss it, I can go to the app on my Roku device and watch it there. So there's, benefits to the technology. I'm not anti-technology, never will be. So you guys, once again, have a good weekend, and I will see you Monday at noon for Monday after